Who doesn't love a gorgeous fire and sitting around a fire? In this episode, we are going to dive into how fire destroys, purifies, ignites. And we're not just talking like a physical fire, obviously. We're talking about that internal fire that you have within and what is the quickest way to put it out and to contain it so that it doesn't consume you. Stay tuned. Queens, let's talk about something we all do, but no one likes to discuss. Time on the throne. Listen, you wouldn't let just anyone into your kingdom, so why are you letting toxic toilet paper touch your royal bum? When I discovered the horrible chemical ingredients that are in most generic toilet papers, I started looking desperately for something not only for my royal behind, but for my little prince and princesses. It is time to upgrade to Who Gives a Crap. 100% recycled, forest-friendly, and totally toxin-free. This TP is not just good for your bum, it is good for the planet. Plus 50% of their profits go toward building toilets for those in need. That's right, your flush fund can literally change lives. I personally have been using Who Gives a Crap for years, and let me tell you, with the subscription model, we are stocked up on TP Gold just in case the next world catastrophe hit. So if you're going to sit on your throne, make it count, ditch the shady TP, and go royal with Who Gives a Crap, because wiping shouldn't cost the earth. Order it now in the link below at whogivesacrap.org.
Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
Hello, and welcome back to the Crown Yourself podcast. I am your host, Kimberly Spencer. I am so excited to be back here with you and just allowing for this spaciousness of being in a birth portal, waiting for the day my daughter decides her birthday. And I was like, it's time to just record some podcast episodes. Let's do it. And we've had a lot of cold here in Texas recently. And so I love the fact that our home, one of the things that I've always wanted was having a fireplace. And when we manifested our home, it had a fireplace, like a real fireplace. I have a fake one in my office and it's lovely, but it's not the same. It's like hearing the crackling of the fire and just also the maintenance that comes with it. Not that I was like really eagerly looking forward to the maintenance of it, let's be honest. But fortunately, I have a very strong 7-year-old who actually loves being of service to clean out the fire pit. Maybe it's a dirt thing. But one day I was cleaning out the fire. And one of the things with having a fireplace is obviously fire safety and responsibility. And as I was getting ready for bed and noticing that there was still a bit of a fire going, and I don't want to just douse it with water, because if you douse it with water, then the next day when it's cold and you want to start a fire in the morning, you have a wet fireplace, and that's not very conducive to having a crackling fire. So I took the shovel and I started shoveling ash onto the fire, and faster than water, the ash just snuffed the fire out. And it got me really thinking about the internal fires that we have that we easily snuff out with our past ash. And I know in my TED Talk, I said, living in the ashes of a past death. I was very proud of that line. But be the phoenix that rises from the ashes, that has that transformation, that is able to alchemize into that next level of who you're evolving to be, and the next level of your business, or the next level of your family that you're growing into. Where I see most people get stuck is when they look back to those ashes of who they have been, and they snuff out those little fires, those sparks that have started within them. The old you, the old beliefs, the old fears, all of those are your ashes. And so often, especially when we've been burned, especially when we've gone through hardship, especially when we've tried something and it failed, then we have the curse of experience. Now, I ask my clients all the time, what is the way you've learned the fastest? Always, hands down, it's from experience. Hands down, every time. They didn't read it in a book. Even though I've coached multiple PhDs, every time, whether you have a PhD or you're just like me and you dropped out of college right before you're supposed to start, the biggest teacher has always been experience. But the problem is that teacher of experience can also be a curse, because then you have the experience of saying, well, I tried that and it didn't work. I've heard this with so many entrepreneurs. I tried podcasting and that didn't work. Okay, well, did you have a follow-up? Did you follow the follow-up process? Did you follow the sales steps? Did you have a funnel in place? No? Okay, well, then it's not a surprise that it didn't work. You didn't have a system in place. It's not that it didn't work. You just didn't have the system built, or you didn't follow the system, or you didn't train your team to operate within the system. When we allow for those experiences to then taint the potentiality of the next fire, of that next, like, okay, I'm going to light it again. All right, that failed. That sucked. That was hard. Okay, I'm going to light it again. But then we cover that fire and we smother it with the ashes of our past experiences. And in this episode, it is my goal to teach you a framework, at least, to help you keep that fire stoked, learn what you can from those past experiences, and really actually look at the data. And I know this is like not the sexiest thing. And in my Queen Bee coaching program, where I work with entrepreneurs for 3 months to 12 months, in that program, we have either one session or 1 month, if you're on the 12-month track, dedicated to data. And most of my clients think that this is like the unsexiest thing. Some of them, they like their data. They'll like, especially when I work with people who have been in project management or any sort of organizational development, they're like, oh, yay, data. Or if they're scientists, like I had a client who's a NASA scientist, and I was like, she loved her data. She was like, oh, I've been waiting for this session. But for the most part, more often, us visionary entrepreneurs are not like, oh, yeah, give me the data. And yet, it is data that can liberate you, because feelings will fluctuate. And feelings come with assumptions, and they come with stories. And stories can be really empowering. And stories can also be the biggest bullshit lies that you've ever told to yourself. So when we look at the data, that is when we have an opportunity to actually fuel that fire and see what else our fire needs in order to fully be stoked. Maybe it needs some gasoline. Not saying do that in your home. Do not. But maybe it needs a little, like one of the things Spike has been using has been paper towels that he takes the bacon fat from like our breakfast bacon, and he repurposes the bacon fat into these, what he calls fire starters, and they work brilliantly. We had piles of wood from down branches and storms that have happened. And because Texas had a burn ban in effect, we weren't able to burn these gigantic pyres of wood. And finally, the burn ban was lifted for like a day. And Spike went out and he took these little paper towels wrapped in with bacon fat wrapped in them, and he put them around the fire, and he was like, those things went up. Like, obviously to do the full burn, he used lighter fluid and things, and it was outside and in a very safe and contained space. But he said the thing that made the difference in how fast those burned was using the bacon fat. Crazy. But that's my pioneer wife of a husband. I lovingly call him my pioneer wife because he likes to make jams and preserves and his own sauerkrauts and things like that. And I'm like, that is so far removed from me being me. But it's one of the reasons why I love him so much. So back to the point, total sidetrack. But looking at what are those things that you need to actually, what is the bacon fat that you need to actually fuel that fire? And then we're going to look at how to use your ash to put out the fear and doubt. Because what happens is that when we look at those experiences and we leverage those past experiences as data points of like, oh, well, I've tried that and it failed. Well, then that can either put out our fire, but if we look at the data points, then that actually allows us to see, well, what specifically failed? Like, it may not have entirely been a failure. You doing webinars may not have entirely been a failure. You just didn't have the lead flow capacity. You doing podcast interviews and generating clients from going on podcasts, that process, that is not necessarily a failure. Like, it's worked for many people. I know, I literally wrote the book on it. It's generated over $250,000 for my own personal business and tens of thousands of dollars for clients of ours. So like, I know that the process works when you work it, but it could be that there were steps in the system that you didn't leverage. And so if you miss those steps or you miss those data points, then yeah, it's not going to work. You're either going on the wrong podcast, you're not following up, you're not being of service or operating with a standard of generosity. Maybe your communication style and how you're communicating. We had that with one of our clients where we looked at all of the things he was doing and I was like, why are you not seeing a return? And then I went and I actually talked to some of the podcasts that he'd been on. And it turns out like they were like, yeah, it seemed like he was just kind of phoning it in. And I was like, oh, so there wasn't an energy that was there that was present. And people feel energy. And that energy is a data point. Feedback is a data point. It's not just how I'm like, oh, I tried this strategy and it didn't work. So we're going to look at all of those ashes in this episode today. So let's start with looking at that moment that you're stepping into something new. Whatever it is that you're stepping into, that new project, that new initiative, that new hiring, that new team member, it can feel overwhelming. It can feel all-consuming. It can feel scary. And it's in this stage when you're lighting that spark that you want to fuel your fire with focusing on your desires, your ambitions, and your passions. You want to focus on specifically where you want this to go, looking at those what are the data points that show that you're getting there, and then focus from an outcome-based perspective. And you also want to look at the lessons and growth from your past experiences. So let's say you have a fire that you are bringing on a new team member and you're like, yes, I need this new team member. I'm so excited about this person coming on board. But in the back of your mind, you've had the experiences of before of hiring team and them letting you down or them underperforming, or they struggle to meet your standards, or they struggle to follow your instructions, or maybe then your cash flow got tight, like I had that experience too. Your cash flow got tight around keeping this team member on. You couldn't validate why they were on and what they were doing to the extent of what they were costing the business, and you couldn't see how they were profitable. So you have these past experiences of lessons and growth, and you could hypothetically snuff out that fire of the passion and ambition of hiring and scaling and growing and getting some things off your plate with the ashes of those past experiences. It's going to take so much time. Oh my gosh, good people are so hard to find. All of these belief systems that can be built up from past experiences. So you can either choose to have those experiences weigh you down or become the wisdom that really fuels and cultivates you to rise. And how you alchemize that wisdom is, first of all, you recognize this is an entirely new and different person. And ideally, the fact that you're going into hiring a person, you've probably thought through all the contingencies And I would highly also recommend you look at a tool like ChatGPT and you have it give an assessment of how you can measure this team member's progress. Literally ask it, hey, I'm hiring a new VA to take some things off my plate. How can I measure within 90 days that this person is profitable, is proving profitable to my enterprise of what I'm scaling and growing? What are the KPIs that this person needs to reach? What are the outcomes that they need to achieve? And what are the things that they will be taking off of my plate as a business owner? Because when you can leverage a tool like ChatGPT to help you think through all of those possibilities, so often we hire and we have the excitement of hiring someone because we can hire them. And I got into this I shared this in the past episode of like, once you pass a certain marker in your business financially of revenue, a lot of times there's those other goals of like, ooh, I have a 10-person team. I'm like, yeah, is your 10-person team effective? Like, are they efficient or are they costing you money? Like, I've seen teams with 4 people that are mother effing efficient. Like, they do the unimaginable. Like, they move mountains and serve their clients well. And I've seen teams of 10 that are run completely ineffectively, but it allows an owner to toot their horn in the fact that they have this giant team. Queen, let's talk efficiency. As a Virgo, I live for streamlined systems, and that's exactly why I've used Kajabi to run Crown Yourself since 2017. In fact, in 2022, we took it even further, moving our entire podcast and CRM onto Kajabi, because having everything in one place, game changer. No more tech headaches, no more system switching, just one smooth, scalable platform for business growth. And for a limited time, you can get 30 days free to try it out for yourself. Start streamlining your empire today. Click the link below to start your 30-day free trial with Kajabi. I've seen business owners go into bankruptcy because they've left their team on for too long. They didn't have clear outcomes. They didn't have clear processes. They didn't know who to fire, and they didn't know what that person's purpose was. So allow yourself to look at the data of the, especially if you're starting out small, look at the data and leverage that data, and then leverage a tool like ChatGPT to really help you think through, so that when you assess your new team members' progress, you're not thinking of, oh, but I have built such a nice relationship with them, or I really like them. You're thinking of, did they hit the outcomes? Are they an asset to the business? Are they actually helping take things off my plate? Are they allowing me to focus more on the things that I need to focus on as a business owner, which is sales and customer client retention? So looking at that is where you can leverage a tool like ChatGPT to run through some of the questions to get those data points, so that 90 days from now, when you assess that team member, you have the proper assessment tools and KPIs to see, are they hitting those markers? Are those markers even accurate measurements of their performance? Because once you look at the ashes of that new passion, once you look at the potential fire that can be fueled, the growth that can happen, the amazing warmth and love that can happen from whatever project you're launching, whether it's a new offer or you're doing a new initiative or you're hiring a new team member, you want to look at each one of those is going to grow you personally as a leader. And so you want to look at what parts of those identities, beliefs, or habits have already been turned to ash from your past leadership experiences. What are those lessons that you can extract that will enhance you as a leader? And what are the things that you need to let the past stay in the past? Like I said with that example of podcast interviews. So podcast interviews, the belief system could have been, I communicate great. I speak all the time, da-da-da-da-da. And you have this highfalutin, sorry, we got to check your ego, this highfalutin attitude of, oh, podcast should be easy. I should easily be able to convert. But then it turns out that you don't follow the processes, you don't do the follow-up, you don't engage and build a relationship with the podcaster like our process teaches. And so if you don't do those things, then the beliefs, that identity of I'm such an amazing speaker, I should close people right off of this interview. Yeah, you can, maybe, but people feel energy, and people feel the energy of pride, quite frankly. And some people are turned off by that. In fact, I think in this world right now, in current climate, especially in America, a lot of people are turned off by pride. So we need to check our own egos and assess, are we showing up with a heart of service? Are we truly and so that could be a part of the identity that you may need to burn away. If you're not seeing a certain result that you desire, it may not just be because, oh, I'm not just following the process. It may be the process that you have internally, your own internal belief system. In NLP, one of the tools that we are taught is how to model and how to model excellence. And there is this very specific thought process. And in certification, you go through this process to learn how to break a board and karate chop a board in half from never having done it before. You don't have to train for 1,000,000 hours in karate. You just go forth and break a board. And you do it by modeling the instructor. And the instructor will walk you through every step. Now every step you can put together as an internal processing system. So those internal processing systems, if there are certain pieces that you miss in it, for example, seeing your hand go through the board, then if you miss that visualization technique and step, the system won't work. You won't see it. You won't have the result. So you have to look at, it's not just systems on a piece of paper. It's also looking at your internal systems. The same I mentioned with guest podcasting. If you're not visualizing, seeing this podcast or feeling that this podcast could turn into a future opportunity, and you're not looking at ways to leverage a podcast interview for multiple different either referrals, client generation, brand expansion and exposure, if you're not looking at that through those lenses, well, then of course you're not going to get the result. Of course you're not, because you're not following the system. And it's an internal system. It's not necessarily one that you're going to have on a Trello board with an SOP. So you have to look at those internal systems, just like breaking a board, and what are the visual, auditory cues, self-talk that you have going on that it has in the past turned experiences that you thought, oh, I've tried, turn those strategies into ash. And then letting that inform your next bold move, letting that inform the transformation, because we have the simple principle, that which is conscious manifests happily, that which is unconscious manifests unhappily. So instead of I failed at my last business, it's I now know exactly what not to do. Because looking at that failure of oh, I failed at my last business. Did you really fail? You probably satisfied a lot of customers. What specifically did you fail at? Maybe it was cash flow management. Maybe it was hiring. So there's a specific aspect of the business that you may have failed in, but it doesn't mean that everything was a failure. And the problem is with failure, when we do an NLP, what's called chunking up, which I talk about in Make Every Podcast Want You in my book. There's a concept of chunking up and chunking down. And when we chunk up to, oh, this whole thing was a failure, that either it's the whole business was a failure, or this whole relationship was a failure, or this whole strategy was a failure, like webinars or podcast interviews. Well, not necessarily. There probably was just a few specific things that you missed. And so you're snuffing out the fire of the possibility of another business or another great relationship or another strategy working for you because you're putting the ash of the past on the potential of what could be. So instead, we want to get specific. Specificity will help you fuel your fire, and specificity will also help you clean out your fireplace. Because when you look at the specific things that maybe you failed at or didn't do as well at or didn't get the results that you desired in, and you chunk down into what specifically was the problem, well, the problem, if it was, let's say, a cash flow issue, then the problem was in the cash flow issue, in your money management. So in your next business venture, hire a bookkeeper, hire a CPA early on, walk yourself through the tax strategies, make sure that the people that you're hiring can pay for themselves, like in essence, like not obviously you're hiring them and you pay them, but make sure that the people that you're hiring are creating profit for the business, not just creating an added expense. Because every reinvention, every new initiative, every new goal, it requires a fire. And you're going to have to use the wisdom of what's been burned. But the key word there is wisdom. It's the wisdom from the experience that's been extracted versus taking all the ash of the experience, that chunked up big old pile of ash that's been extracted, and dumping it on to the fire. Now, to circle back to that night that I was putting out the fire, there was something there very interesting that I noticed. There we use firestarter logs, not the bacon thing that my husband uses. We do use that sometimes, but firestarter logs. And so in these firestarter logs, they're compressed, it's compressed recycled materials that sometimes when a piece of that, maybe it's fallen away and it looks like ash, but it's a little darker. If you put it on top of the fire, it can actually ignite it again. And you just thought it was ash. And I like to think of that as the wisdom that we've gleaned from the past experiences, adding that fuel for the next level instead of smothering the fire for your next level that you're going for. So, first and foremost, I want you to tell me, what did you love about this episode? What fire are you fueling today? And what are the ashes from past experiences that are going to teach you and guide you? What is the wisdom? What are those little sparks still left over from your starter logs that you're going to use to leverage to ignite and further that fire? And what is the ash that you're just going to dump in a bucket? The ashes don't have to be proof of what you just lost. You don't have to be covered in it and say, "Oh, look at what I've lost," because that's where we get into a whole identity of victimhood, which is for another episode. Instead, you can leverage those for being the foundation of your next empire, because here's the amazing thing with ash. It can be really powerful and beautiful for soil. And I wouldn't have known this had we not had a homestead. But we have leveraged using the ash from our fireplace in order to feed and nourish the soil of our trees. You can use the past ash as nourishment for your next venture, so long as you extract the wisdom that can continue keeping the fire aflame. As on this episode, I mentioned thinking through your next big idea, I have created a brand new resource for you to really think through from start to finish, from inception to income, your next big idea, allowing for the holistic picture to be thought through for growth and scalability. And it is in 100 ChatGPT prompts that I've already prepared for you. So all you got to do is take that big visionary idea of yours, or that next initiative, and start plugging and chugging away with those prompts and seeing what ChatGPT helps you come up with as the visionary leader for your business. Click down below to access that new free guide, and I will see you on the next episode. As always, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. If this episode sparks something in you, imagine what could happen if podcasts everywhere were asking for you. That's exactly what Make Every Podcast Want You helps you to do. And it's not just hype. It is not only a bestseller and 2-time gold medal award winner, Stacklist listed it in New York Times Square as one of the top books to change your life of 2024 for a reason. So if you're ready to become the guest every host dreams of, grab your copy of Make Every Podcast Want You in the link below and make your voice unforgettable.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.